Welcome to the One for the Road podcast. My name is Mr. K. Alongside me, as always, is C Squared. Tonight is episode 20. We made it to episode 20. Weird events and how they coincide with the economy and social norms is going to be our topic tonight. The one in particular we'd like to look at is the relationship between in October 2019 LIBOR rates going off the charts and how that coincides with COVID-19 breakout.
Yeah, there we are, and all kinds of fun stuff. So this should be a burner, folks, because there is more than a little cursory evidence to show that every so often when oddities materialize in the financial system, people seem to be able to call this and profit. But additionally, those oddities are able to save the day for the core financial system. Except, of course, in 2009 when you and me had to save the day for our banks. Don't you feel better about that?
Yeah, so much better. Yeah. Well, the Lehman Brothers went down. There was lots of people went
Well,
down.
it's that one boat always has to sink
Yes,
as a
yes,
lesson, and
that's
you're
true.
you wouldn't I wouldn't be a bit surprised. You wouldn't be a bit surprised to find out that the missile that sank the boat is usually fired by the other friendly boats next sailing next to it. And better you than
Yeah,
me.
yes.
So
That is that would be called a sacrifice.
exactly.
Something.
Funny how that works. The
Yeah,
bad bank, man. Oh, the horrible bad bank, man.
yeah,
I'm glad that I transferred all my negative worth assets to them, that they shockingly bought them from me just weeks before the disaster happened. It
yeah,
was what a stroke of luck that was. And
yeah,
they
yes,
were they were just completely incompetent because they not only bought my bad assets, they bought your bad assets too. Isn't
yeah,
that the competency level there was substandard?
yeah, yeah. Unreal.
Isn't that ironic?
So I could set this up for you. In October 2019, the banks almost collapsed. Particularly the repo market experienced significant disruption in October 2019, led to sharp spikes in short-term interest and required intervention. Uh,
Absolutely. And so, folks, if you do not know what the LIBOR and the repo market is, I will give you the quick 30 seconds on that. Banks actually loan each other money overnight to make themselves whole. And other entities like the Fed also loan banks money overnight to make them whole. The There are two metrics which have changed. It is no longer LIBOR, but there are two metrics that basically say this is how much money was lent overnight to make the banking system whole, and this is the a percentage rating of how confident we are that the banking system is not going to collapse before that we are going to get repaid that money within the next 12 to 24 hours. That used to be known as the LIBOR rate. I believe now it's called the SOFR rate.
Yes.
But the bottom line is that is how confident that within the next 12 to 24 hours am I that I'm actually going to get my money back from Bank
Right.
A. And then the other piece is the amount of money that all banks have been loaned within the last 12 to 24 hours from either another bank or from the Fed. Both of those rates in October of
2019.
2019 spiked substantially to crisis levels, and it was essentially painted over and swept underneath the rug. And then you had things like COVID, which created a substantial kink in the flow of money. Nobody was buying or selling anything. Shipping was being shut down and so forth. So, what that did is create the send the viscosity of money, viscosity being the exchanging of money for goods or services. It brought that down to near zero, or in some industries, negative. So there was no more viscosity of money, which takes the pressure off of the banks who were doing substantial overnight lending in between each other. When there is no more viscosity of money, then the banks, there's a lot less pressure for Bank A to lend Bank B money overnight. Isn't that interesting,
Right.
man? And that lasted for a couple of years. So, well, if I look at that and say, what a stroke of luck it was that just when the banking system appeared to be on the verge of another crisis and collapse, something weird just happened, like COVID, that created the financial conditions that allowed the banking system to land on their feet by basically creating an economic situation where nothing was in simple layman's terms, nothing was happening. Nobody was
Right.
buying anything.
Right.
No money was trading hands. Nobody was shipping anything.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
What were the circumstances, bizarre circumstances, that you would lead to that type of condition? What were the odds that something like that? Speaking of going back a couple of podcasts here when we talked about odds and betting. What were the
Yes.
odds of that actually happening? And I'm guessing pretty darn low. And I
Right.
would just sum this up in the last piece of that. I am positive there were quite a few people who gambled on those odds, and they took substantial risk um, to their money, um, uh, to essentially gain handsomely, based on something that had tremendous odds of not occurring.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
so, ironic, and it's like the losing horse over and over again and
Right.
watching them win 5 times in a row.
Right.
And what are the odds of that?
Right.
That just so happened. And then in race 6, the horse actually fell over and died. That's like,
Yeah.
well, what were the odds of that winning 5 in a row and then falling over and collapsing and dying? And I bet all 6 races correctly. Isn't that
Yeah.
ironic, man?
How ironic. Interesting about some of the causes of that October 2019 shortfall of cash there. There was a temporary cash shortage. It says a confluence of factors led to a temporary shortage of cash in the financial system at the time in 2019. Here's one that was interesting: was quarterly corporate tax payments were due, so they drained the bank to make their tax payments.
Isn't
So
that ironic?
that contributed a bit to uh, the repo market not having any money. It seems.
Yeah, isn't
And,
that interesting that all this stuff came in at
yeah,
one time
at
and
the same
nobody
time.
saw this coming? And so, what I will say is, I just watch a little bit. I watch for what they would consider black swan events, because in my mind, a black swan event is always around the corner every 5 years or so. And guess what? We're probably heading towards that uh, scenario. So, you bring up, John, that corporate quarterly tax payments were due, and that was a driver of that. Huh. Well, currently commercial real estate, which has a usual refi time window of about 3 years. It's not like you get a 30-year mortgage like you would have on your house or anything like that. I believe commercial real estate loans are like 3 year. If they're fixed, they're 3 year fixed
Right.
rates, and then you re up for that thing. Well, while interest rates are higher now than they were quite a while ago, isn't that interesting that lots of commercial real estate, which is now appraising it less than it was before, um, it needs to come up with the numbers, the correct numbers, to make their refinancing work within the next 12 to 18 months.
Right.
Should we be watching commercial real estate for the next black swan train
Right.
wreck waiting to happen, or what event could possibly
Right.
derail the commercial real estate collapse? Let's see.
Right.
Use your imagination, folks, because it could be
Right.
just about anything.
Right. 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 Uh, Interesting about black swan events, and you'll like this, Chris. I just looked up black swan events and the cycles, and you can almost predict them. And the years on this are quite astonishing. So the top five black swan events. Number one is the dot-com bubble in the late 1990s.
Yep.
2 years later, we have 9/11. In 2001, we have 9/11.
Yep. Because
2008 is the financial crisis.
yep.
2016 is the Brexit vote.
Oh yeah, there you go.
And then late 2019, 2020, COVID.
So
So,
you're looking at somewhere between eight eight
yeah,
years being the longest and 3 years being the shortest.
yes,
So the probably the average is about 5 years. Who'd have
right,
guessed that?
right.
So the
Yeah, yeah,
it's like somewhere in
yeah,
between those windows is you can't really go probably longer than 8 years without having some financial hiccup
right,
that is creating this. And why would that be? I hate to be a negative Nelly, but when you built a Ponzi scheme off of fractional reserve banking, that is par for the course. And
right, right.
Mr.
So,
K, why would you say something like that about fractional bankers?
yeah, yeah. Uh, So the one thing that's always been remarkable that you alluded to a little bit is people taking opportunities during those times.
That
So
there is a whole nother thing. Who 9/11? Let's go back to 9/11. Who took the, 20,000 to 1 bet on buying, millions of dollars of put options on the airline industries
yeah,
on that in particular week or month? That I just had, $10 million that that I just wildly randomly speculate and lose most of the time, and I just happen to win this time. And I mean, seriously, folks, ridiculous that those type of bets were put into place and paid out, and it is very suspicious in actually finding the folks that put those bets in place, let alone the fact that you have people in Congress who are exempt from insider trading and just clean house doing stuff like that. And so
right.
if you think that your interest as a citizen comes above their financial interest in making profit on insider information that you and me would be in prison for actually gambling on, you are incorrect. They are as seedy as seedy gets,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
and absolutely there for their own enrichment. If you think that you are anything more than a secondary concern to them, other than they need to pander to you every 2 to 6 years to essentially keep the scam going, where they're able to enrich themselves, you are probably incorrect in that assumption.
yeah. I wouldn't say they're all like that, but yeah,
I would agree with you, John. There are probably 10 people out of both houses that are not like
right.
that.
I always,
The other 600 and something are pretty much derelict scumbags. But
yeah, I think some are on the power trip. I think some are actually in it to help people. But yeah, there's some who are in it to help them.
yeah, I would say the
So
bulk of them.
right, and yeah, there's been some beauties in there. So I
But
forgot what I was
so
gonna-
from
oh,
that,
oh, I know what I was going to say. So COVID, I remember during COVID, the market was down. So as an individual investor, here's what was going through my mind was, oh my God, all my holdings have lost like significant amount of money. And to get that even back to even is going to be a while. So that stinks. But then it's like, well, if you got a lot of cash, this is buying time
right,
because there's two outcomes that are going to happen to COVID. It's the end of the world or it's not the end of the world.
right.
I'm going to bet on it not being. And if it is the end of the world, it won't care if I have holdings of the S&P 500 at 400 and now it's at 296.
Right.
Because there isn't going to be a world where that matters.
So ironically enough, that's a great point, Mr. K, in the aspect of, if you were watching in October, paying attention, looking for that black swan, or just even really reading the deep financial information, like I was, and seeing, hey, this is really happening, you wouldn't even had to buy puts. All you would have had to do was sell your assets in October before the
Oh,
big
yeah, yeah.
for the
Yep.
before the big SmackDown happen and roll into cash on the sidelines. And by the time that 2020, that you were three-fourths of the way into 2020, so you would have been sitting on your cash for about 9 months, sitting on your cash stash for about 9 months, you'd have killed it.
Oh yeah,
Man,
yeah,
because you
yeah.
would have lost nothing, and
Right.
then you would have
Yep.
said, I can afford, with the reasoning that you just laid out, which is valid, I can afford to bet all the cash at S&P 200
Right.
opposed to S&P 400, because guess what? I think eventually in the next 4 years it's going back to S&P 400, and guess
Yeah.
what? If I'm wrong, if it's S&P 20, that means the entire scam has
Right.
collapsed and it
Right.
wouldn't
Right.
matter
Right.
one
Exactly.
iota
Yep.
anyway, dude, because the money that I had sitting there was worthless or gone. Right?
Right. Right.
At S&P 20, guess what? There's the whole, if you think the S&P is the only thing that has collapsed at S&P 20, you are
Right.
a little naive.
It's the end of the
And
world.
basically every wheel on the car
Right.
has
Right.
become disconnected,
Yes.
and you
Yes.
are now in a ditch.
Yes. Yes. It's over. It's over.
It's over. It's pretty well it.
Here's a quick question. Would you characterize the tariffs as a mini black swan event?
Uh, Maybe, but and they are. So that's a great question. That's a great question, Mr. K. I would say that we may be getting more savvy. So let's talk about, that's an incredible point. Let's talk about the tariffs slowing down global trade, slowing down the viscosity of money. Back to that.
Right.
And
Right.
then let's talk about this thing that just came up within this last week about the truck drivers being a law that basically says all the truck drivers need to comprehend English or they can't have a CDL, I believe.
Wow.
That's the crux of the issue. So, what do you think that might actually do? What effect do you think that actually might have? It also, the same scenario that you are doing on tariffs over here, saying, I don't want you to ship anything to my country via shipping to make the international viscosity of money nothing.
Right.
I also need to make that happen internally to
Right.
the country. So how would I make it so I don't use a bunch of trucking firms to ship things from New York to LA? And
Right. Right.
what could I do
Right.
to impact the domestic trucking industry?
Right.
Are tariffs related to the domestic trucking industry? If I was to look at this and say, and back into the calculation of saying, what could I do to completely shut down domestic and
Right.
international
Right.
viscosity of money? Interesting.
Right.
I could, interesting how these two seemingly
Right.
unrelated events, immigration and
Oh,
tariffs, all are somehow just materialized to be related and have the exact impact that I have to have every 5 to 8 years,
right. Yep. Yep.
to
We're due.
stem the viscosity of trade and money.
Right.
Is anybody else talking about this?
Right. Right.
Do I
Right.
just make this stuff up myself?
We're we're on the edge of this, I think.
Right, exactly.
I haven't heard anybody talk about
Since
this.
we have a very, very since our podcast is for the very intelligent,
Yes.
highly intelligent listeners only. The I wish somebody would actually listen to our podcast and pick it up, like Jimmy Dore or Kirk
Yeah.
Metzner or Alex
Yeah.
Jones or one of these people could maybe pick up our
Joe Rogan.
podcast and Zero Hedge
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they
Joe Rogan.
pick up our podcast and at
Yes.
least give us a quote or something in your
right. Hey, these guys are onto something. I mean, we're due. We're due for a Black Swan event. I mean, we're due.
Right. I think
like
we're
you
due
said,
too.
it's been 5 years.
And ironically enough, that you look at those two events and say, huh, and there's a bunch of other things going on too. The budget bill. And so
Geez.
what would and I don't think we even got into this yet, Mr. K. So let's look at the huge beautiful bill or the big beautiful bill, which is really a stinky piece of trash per Elon and Tom Massey and a bunch of other people who are not a bunch of crackpots, who are highly intelligent people. These are not a bunch of like fringe protesters. This is the richest man in the world and somebody who has been in Congress for many years, if not a couple of decades, along with other people. Ron, I don't want to leave out Ron Johnson saying this too. Probably one of the few good guys senators, Rand Paul and folks like that. So you look at this and say that while Trump does some good things, I like some of the stuff that Trump does. Let's focus on this big beautiful bill, and let's focus on his constant attack of Fed Chair Jerry Powell, who, I'm not a fan of the Fed. Obviously, I think they're probably the criminal
obviously
in their founding. However, would it really matter if it was Jerry Powell or Grandma Yellen or the Bernanke or whoever you had in there? They're all, it doesn't matter. But so the Don, President Trump, would like to cut interest rates. That would, what would cutting interest rates actually do? Well, one thing, if we go into the way back machine to 12 minutes ago when we talked about the commercial real estate refinancing collapse, and what a coincidence, the Don does know a lot about commercial real estate, say, and kind of his forte. The bottom line, it would help those folks substantially. But what would it do to people like you and me? Well, if the viscosity of money was very high, you would have immediate inflation into the economy. And people like me and Mr. K and the bulk of the country out there would be highly upset with the Don for cutting interest rates to benefit the wealthy and the bankers, holding the paper on this commercial real estate, and screwing over the mega plebes and even us Tea Party type plebes who voted him in and are saying now you're basically destroying us by creating this inflation. So what would the scenario be where we could lower interest rates and not see that inflation come into the economy for maybe 12 to 18 months? And the answer would be the answer to almost anything, hand, if the viscosity of money was zero and then you weren't buying anything and no trade was going on internationally or domestically,
Mm.
then hey, you might not see you might be able to get away with cutting the interest rates for a short period of time and not see the inflation. Now, eventually, you are going to see that inflation is going to filter into the economy. I'll say in about 2 years when I'm leaving office and can't
Right,
when I'm leaving office and can't run again, and
right.
uh,
Surprise.
huh? If you actually listened and paid attention to some of this stuff, you might actually think this is a really spiffy plan that some people have thought up and thought through very well, and nobody's talking about it either because they don't fully understand it, or the people that do understand it have been told, why don't you not cover that topic anytime soon?
Right, right,
So
right.
if I will tell you, me and Mr. K are not suicidal, and we
No,
are, and if we mysteriously disappear, it is very unlikely that we have been abducted by aliens. And but you could bet on that on one of these betting pools, and I'm sure
yes,
it would pay
yes,
out big.
yes.
What is the 30-day over and under for Mr. K being abducted by an alien? So
I would think the odds would be high. I hope you're still around. I hope to have to do more podcasts.
yeah, yeah,
Do
exactly,
more
dude.
podcasts.
The question is does peer to peer work in
Outer space.
space or through
Right,
wormholes and black holes? But
right.
that will have to be covered in another
Yes,
episode.
yes, yes.
Hmm.
All right, C squared is that's all I got for this topic. Did you have anything else?
No, I think we were really clear on this, and while Mr. K had a bunch of good data as usual on this, we don't have any inside track as to how this will materialize. But other than to say, boy, I should be watching. We took a couple of unconnected puzzle pieces and
Right,
threw them out, and boy,
right,
they seem like they could actually fit together and be the corner pieces of the puzzle. So
right.
A, I'd be watching that, but B, who knows? Some other black swan event could be coming, and if you see
Yeah,
these black swan events with the key of the viscosity of trade and money just went to zero or
mhm,
negative. Hmm. Who's your friend who told you
right.
that first?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Anyway, I'll close
Good,
on that, Mr. K.
good deal. All right. You can reach us via email at onefortheroadpodcast@gmail.com. Our website's up. I got the
Yay!
website up, onefortheroad.net. Working on some kinks, but yes, there is some content. More to come. Some links in there, but we're up and functional. Like and subscribe us on YouTube. We're on 3 different audio platforms: RSS.com, Spotify, and Podbean. For C squared, this is Mr. K. Have a good week.
Thanks, folks. Always appreciate you listening. Have a great week.
Have a good one.